The morning sun cast long shadows across New Haven's busy marketplace when the sky changed forever. Children played between the vendor stalls while their parents traded goods from the latest Earth supply ship. Nobody looked up at first when the shadows grew darker. It was only when the temperature dropped and the birds stopped singing that people began to notice something was wrong. David Torres was reviewing crop reports in his office when his assistant burst through the door without knocking. Her face was pale and her hands shook as she pointed toward the window. Outside, massive shapes blocked out the sun. Ships larger than anything humans had ever built hung motionless in the sky like metal mountains. Their dark hulls absorbed light, rather than reflecting it, making them appear as holes cut into reality itself. The communication system crackled to life with panicked voices from across the colony. Farmers reported similar ships over their fields. The orbital mining station went silent after transmitting a single terrified message about vessels the size of cities appearing near their position. Even the automated defense satellites stopped, responding to commands. Torres grabbed his emergency communicator and tried to reach other human colonies. The responses came slowly, each one confirming his worst fears. Similar ships had appeared over every human settlement within 50 light years. The pattern was too organized to be coincidence. Someone had planned this carefully, timing their arrival to catch humanity completely unprepared. The first broadcast came at noon. Every screen, every speaker, every communication device in the colony activated simultaneously. The voice that emerged spoke perfect human English, but with an accent that made the words sound like grinding metal. The speaker identified itself as Commander Malik of the Ravek Empire. Its message was simple and terrifying. Humans were trespassing on territory claimed by the Galactic Council. The rapid expansion of human colonies violated ancient agreements between established civilizations. Humanity had been judged and found guilty of unauthorized expansion into restricted space. Each colony had 3 days to evacuate completely or face total destruction. No negotiations would be considered. No appeals would be heard. The transmission ended with images of what had happened to other species who had ignored similar warnings. Planets burned from orbit, cities reduced to ash in minutes, entire civilizations erased as if they had never existed. The message was clear: comply or die. Torres immediately sent emergency signals to Earth and every human colony in the communication network. The responses that came back over the following hours painted a picture of humanity's complete isolation. Earth's last official transmission had been 6 months ago, acknowledging receipt of colony reports with the usual bureaucratic language. The other colonies were either too far away to help or facing the same threats themselves. The supposed allies humanity had made during its expansion into space offered only sympathy. The Centauri Trade Federation expressed regret but claimed their own forces were needed to defend their territory. The peaceful Vegan collective sent prayers and best wishes, but admitted they had no military capabilities. Even the advanced Sirius Commonwealth, who had seemed genuinely friendly to humans, suddenly stopped responding to communications entirely. As the first day ended, Torres realized the horrible truth. Humanity had spread across dozens of star systems, but had never built a real military. Each colony maintained basic defenses against pirates and asteroids, but nothing that could challenge a major alien force. Earth had seemed content to let the colonies grow independently, never mentioning any plans for mutual defense or military cooperation. The mining stations and orbital platforms that should have been humanity's first line of defense were destroyed. On the second day, the alien ships moved with casual precision, their weapons turning sophisticated human technology into expanding clouds of debris. They broadcast each destruction across all frequencies, ensuring every human in the system witnessed their power. Torres watched his people prepare for evacuation. Families packed whatever they could carry while looking up at the alien ships with fear and hatred. Many asked him why Earth wasn't sending help, why the other colonies weren't coming to their aid, why the galaxy had abandoned them. He had no answers to give them. On the final morning, less than half the population had evacuated. The transport ship simply couldn't carry everyone, and many colonists refused to abandon the homes they had built with their own hands. Torres made the hardest decision of his life. He would stay with the volunteers who chose to make their final stand. If humanity was going to die in this system, it would die fighting. The alien commander's final message was broadcast at exactly noon on the third day. Commander Malik's voice carried a tone of disappointed amusement, as if humanity's defiance was nothing more than a child's tantrum. The Ravik Empire had given humans every opportunity to leave peacefully. Now they would learn what happened to species who defied the galactic order. Torres stood in the colony's command center, surrounded by 300 volunteers who had chosen to stay. Most were farmers and engineers, people who had never held a weapon in their lives. They had mining explosives and hunting rifles, tools and equipment converted into makeshift weapons. Against alien technology that could destroy cities from orbit, their preparations seemed pathetic. The alien ships began to move into attack position when something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to ripple near the edge of the system. Energy readings spiked across all sensors before returning to normal. For a moment, Torres thought the aliens were preparing some new weapon. Then his communication officer shouted something that made his heart skip a beat. Unknown ships were approaching the system at incredible speed. The signatures were human, but unlike anything in the colonial database. The vessels were enormous, easily matching the size of the alien craft, but moving with precision that spoke of advanced technology. More importantly, they were broadcasting human military identification codes that were decades out of date. The first Earthship dropped out of hyperspace with weapons already charged. Its hull gleamed with armor that seemed to bend light around itself. Behind it came dozens more, each one bristling with weapon systems that looked like they belonged in science fiction rather than reality. The colonial sensors could barely track them as they moved into combat formation with smooth efficiency. Torres stared at the display screens in disbelief. Earth had been silent for months, letting its colonies face destruction alone. Now it arrived with a fleet that looked capable of challenging entire galactic empires. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Someone had been watching and waiting for exactly this moment. The alien commander's confident broadcasts suddenly stopped. The Ravik ships, so arrogant moments before, began backing away from the planet as Earth's vessels moved to surround them. Whatever was about to happen, Torres realized that everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the galaxy was about to change forever. The gardens of Green Valley had always been Emma Roberts' favorite place to think. The endless rows of crops stretched toward distant mountains while automated harvesters moved between them like gentle giants. Today, those same fields buzzed with evacuation transports loading desperate families while alien warships hung overhead like storm clouds waiting to break. Emma walked through the chaos trying to project calm she didn't feel. Children cried as their parents threw belongings into cargo containers. Farmers stood in their doorways taking final looks at homes they had built with decades of backbreaking work. The evacuation was proceeding efficiently, but not fast enough. Never fast enough. The aliens had appeared over Green Valley exactly 7 hours after the first reports from New Haven reached the colony. Their arrival followed the same pattern that was becoming terrifyingly familiar across human space. Massive ships materialized without warning. A demand for immediate evacuation. Demonstrations of overwhelming force to crush any thoughts of resistance. Green Valley's orbital defense platforms had been destroyed first, their wreckage raining down on the northern continent like burning stars. The colony's small patrol craft hadn't even attempted to fight. Their captains were smart enough to recognize the difference between courage and suicide. Emma's communication logs told the same story being repeated across human space. Colony after colony reporting the same nightmare. Alien fleets appearing simultaneously across dozens of star systems. Local defenses brushed aside like toys. Desperate calls for help echoing unanswered through the void. The responses from Earth had been maddeningly vague. Official channels acknowledged the reports and promised that appropriate measures were being considered. Unofficial sources suggested that Earth's government was in emergency session trying to formulate a response. Neither offered any hope of immediate assistance. Other human colonies were equally helpless. Those that hadn't been attacked themselves were too far away to provide meaningful help. The ones under direct threat were focused entirely on their own survival. Humanity's expansion across the stars had created dozens of isolated communities with no real connection to each other beyond shared heritage. Dr. Michael Stone's research station at Proxima Centauri had been among the first to report alien contact. His final transmission before the communication array was destroyed had painted a grim picture. Advanced alien technology systematically dismantling humanity's most sophisticated research facility. Scientists and engineers forced to watch as decades of breakthrough discoveries were reduced to scrap metal. Stone's team had been working on quantum communication systems that could have revolutionized human space travel. Their research into exotic matter might have led to new forms of energy production. Their analysis of alien artifacts recovered from dead worlds had begun revealing secrets of civilizations millions of years old. All of it lost as the aliens demonstrated their contempt for human achievement. The pattern was becoming clear to anyone willing to see it. The aliens weren't just attacking random human settlements. They were targeting the colonies with the greatest strategic value first. Research stations, major industrial centers, key transportation hubs. Someone had done extensive research on human civilization before launching these coordinated strikes. Emma received hourly reports from other administrators facing the same impossible choices: evacuate and abandon everything, or stay and face certain death. Most chose evacuation, but the transport capacity simply didn't exist to move everyone quickly. Millions of humans were trapped in scattered colonies with no way to escape and no hope of rescue. The aliens seemed to enjoy humanity's helplessness. Their broadcasts became increasingly arrogant as human defenses crumbled across the galaxy. They shared footage of destroyed orbital platforms and burning cities as entertainment for their own populations. Some even offered commentary on human military tactics, laughing at the primitive weapons and desperate strategies. Green Valley's evacuation entered its second day, as Emma made increasingly difficult decisions about who could leave and who would have to wait for the next transport. The elderly and sick went first, followed by families with young children. The volunteers who stayed to maintain essential systems knew they might not get another chance to leave. Emma found herself studying the alien ships through telescopes during rare, quiet moments. The vessels showed signs of multiple design philosophies, as if they had been built by different species working together. Hull configurations that seemed optimal for different environments. Weapon systems that appeared to use completely different technological approaches. This wasn't just one species attacking humanity, but a coalition. The intercepted alien communications confirmed her fears. Multiple species were coordinating the assault on human space, each one contributing ships and expertise to the effort. They spoke of humanity as an infestation to be cleaned up, a minor species that had expanded too quickly without proper authorization from established galactic powers. Most disturbing was the involvement of the Galactic Council itself. The organization, that was supposed to mediate disputes between species and protect younger civilizations from exploitation, had apparently sanctioned this attack. They viewed humanity's rapid expansion as a threat to galactic stability, and had authorized a controlled reduction of human presence in space. The refugees streaming through Green Valley's spaceport carried stories that painted an even bleaker picture. Tales of colonies that had tried to negotiate and been destroyed anyway. Reports of human merchant ships being hunted down and eliminated to prevent any possible escape. Accounts of alien forces using human prisoners to test new weapon systems for their own amusement. Emma made her own hard choice on the third morning. The last transport could carry another 200 people to safety, but someone needed to stay behind to operate the colony's systems and buy time for other evacuations. She had spent 15 years building Green Valley from empty land into humanity's most productive agricultural world. If it was going to die, she would die with it. The volunteers who stayed were mostly farmers and engineers, people who understood the value of sacrifice for the greater good. They had few weapons and no military training, but they had something more important. They knew every inch of their world and were willing to use that knowledge to make the aliens pay for every victory. As the final transport lifted off, Emma stood in the colony's command center, watching the alien ships move into bombardment position. Her last message to Earth was simple and direct. No help was coming from the established galactic powers. Humanity was alone in a universe that viewed them as expendable. If the species was going to survive, it would have to find strength from within. The alien attack began at dawn, but something was wrong. Energy discharges lit up space near the system's edge, but they weren't coming from the invasion fleet. Unknown ships were approaching at tremendous speed, their energy signatures registering as human but unlike anything in the colonial database. Emma stared at her screens in disbelief as dozens of massive vessels dropped out of hyperspace between the aliens and her world. The reinforcements had arrived, but they weren't from any human colony. The ships broadcasting Earth identification codes that were classified above anything Emma had ever seen. As weapons charged and battle formations deployed, she realized that humanity's apparent abandonment might have been something else entirely. The refugee ship Morningstar drifted through deep space carrying the survivors of 3 destroyed colonies. In the cargo holds that had once transported grain and manufactured goods, families huddled together sharing what little food remained. The ship's captain had programmed a course for the nearest neutral system, but fuel was running low and hope was running lower. Dr. Michael Stone sat among the refugees, his research notes reduced to a few data chips hidden in his jacket. Everything else had been lost when the aliens systematically dismantled Proxima Station piece by piece. The decades of work, the breakthrough discoveries, the hope of revolutionizing human technology, all reduced to expanding clouds of debris, orbiting a distant star. The conversations around him followed familiar patterns: anger at Earth's abandonment, fear of what would happen when the fuel ran out, desperate speculation about where they might find safety in a galaxy that seemed determined to eliminate humanity entirely. Stone had heard these same words on every refugee ship, in every emergency shelter, from every survivor who had watched their world burn. But tonight was different. Tonight the old stories were being shared again. It started with Margaret Chen, an elderly woman who had lived on New Beijing before the evacuation. She spoke in whispers about her grandfather, who had worked in Earth's shipyards during the early colonial period. He used to tell stories about projects so classified that workers were kept in separate sections and never saw the complete designs. Ships that were built in pieces across different facilities and assembled in deep space, where no civilian sensors could observe them. Other refugees began sharing similar tales. Stories passed down through families about relatives who had worked on mysterious government projects, rumors about massive construction efforts hidden in the outer planets of the Sol system, whispers about Earth's military capabilities being far greater than anyone suspected. Stone found himself drawn into these conversations despite his scientific skepticism. The stories seemed too coordinated to be mere wishful thinking. Details matched across multiple sources who couldn't have collaborated. References to specific technologies that aligned with his own research into advanced propulsion systems. The refugees spoke of the Silent Fleet, a legendary armada that supposedly remained hidden in Earth's solar system, while the colonies spread across the stars. According to the stories, Earth's apparent technological stagnation was deliberate misdirection. The homeworld had been developing military technology in secret, using discoveries from the colonies to build something unprecedented. Stone pulled out his data chips and began cross-referencing the refugee stories with his own research notes. Patterns emerged that he had never noticed before. Requests from Earth for specific research data that seemed unrelated to any known projects. Shipments of rare materials from the colonies that disappeared into classified facilities. Scientists who left for Earth assignments and were never heard from again. The Morningstar's communication officer picked up alien broadcasts celebrating their victories over humanity. The transmissions were being sent across the galaxy as propaganda, showing destroyed human colonies and fleeing refugee ships. The aliens mocked humanity's primitive defenses and scattered settlements, using human suffering as entertainment for their own populations. But buried in the alien chatter were references that made Stone's blood run cold. Mentions of human colonies, fighting with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Reports of defensive systems using technologies that no known human settlement possessed. Frustrated alien commanders complaining about resistance that was far more organized than intelligence reports had suggested. One transmission mentioned a human colony that had destroyed 3 alien ships before being overwhelmed. Another reported orbital defenses using exotic matter projectiles that had punched through advanced alien armor. A third described human forces using quantum encryption that had taken alien intelligence services weeks to crack. These weren't the desperate last stands of helpless farmers and miners. Someone had been secretly upgrading human defenses and training colonial forces without advertising the fact. The question was who, and why had they allowed so many colonies to be destroyed if they had the power to prevent it? Stone shared his findings with the other refugees, and more pieces of the puzzle emerged. Communications specialists reported receiving encrypted transmissions on frequencies that weren't supposed to exist. Engineers described modifications to colonial defense systems that had been installed by anonymous Earth technicians. Military veterans spoke of training exercises that had seemed pointless at the time, but now looked like preparation for exactly this type of crisis. The ship's captain, a gruff woman named Patricia Hayes, joined their discussions on the third day of their journey. She had been flying cargo routes between colonies for 30 years and had seen things that didn't appear in any official reports. Ships that looked human, but moved with technology decades ahead of anything the colonies possessed. Patrol craft that appeared near alien incursions and disappeared just as quickly. Defense installations hidden in asteroid fields that weren't on any navigation charts. Hayes pulled up her navigation computer and showed them something that made Stone's heart race. Deep space sensor readings from her cargo runs over the past decade. Gravitational anomalies that suggested massive objects moving through space in patterns too regular to be natural. Energy signatures that matched theoretical fusion drives but at power levels far beyond anything humanity was supposed to possess. The refugees began to understand that they might have been part of something larger than they realized. Their scattered colonies hadn't been isolated settlements struggling for survival. They had been advanced positions, research outposts, and observation points for a civilization that was far more capable than it appeared. Stone accessed his personal files and found communication logs that he had forgotten about. Messages from Earth requesting specific research data with urgency codes that seemed excessive for academic projects. Shipping manifests for materials that were supposedly needed for infrastructure projects, but were actually components for advanced military systems. The pattern was becoming clear. Earth had been using the colonies as a vast research network, gathering intelligence and developing technologies, while maintaining the appearance of a struggling homeworld, barely able to support its scattered settlements. The apparent abandonment of the colonies during the alien attacks might not have been abandonment at all. As if summoned by their discussions, the ship's long-range sensors detected something impossible. Ships approaching from the direction of Earth, moving at speeds that defied everything Stone knew about human technology. The vessels were enormous, easily matching the size of alien capital ships, but broadcasting human identification codes. Hayes stared at her displays in disbelief. The approaching fleet was using propulsion systems that registered as human, but were decades beyond anything in her experience. Their hull configurations suggested armor and weapons that belonged in theoretical physics papers rather than actual starships. The lead ship opened a communication channel and transmitted a message that sent chills down Stone's spine. A woman's voice, calm and professional, identifying herself as Admiral Rebecca Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. She announced that human colonies were now under the protection of Earth's military forces, and that any alien ships in human space had minutes to withdraw or be destroyed. Stone looked around at the other refugees and saw his own amazement reflected in their faces. The myths and legends they had been sharing weren't fairy tales after all. Earth hadn't abandoned its children in their hour of greatest need. It had been preparing for this moment for decades, building a response that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The refugee ship that had been drifting helplessly through space was suddenly surrounded by escort vessels that looked like they had been designed by gods of war rather than human engineers. Stone realized that everything humanity thought it knew about its own capabilities was about to be proven wrong in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Rebecca Hayes had been waiting in the darkness for 37 years. Her flagship Vengeance hung motionless in the void beyond Pluto's orbit, surrounded by a fleet that officially didn't exist. The ships around her were invisible to alien sensors, their hulls wrapped in metamaterial cloaking that bent electromagnetic radiation around them like water flowing around stones. The Deep Black Protocol had been established when humanity first reached the stars and discovered they weren't alone in the universe. While colonies celebrated their expansion into space, Earth's governments had quietly prepared for the day when that expansion would be challenged. Every major world power had contributed resources and personnel to the project, understanding that humanity's survival might depend on enemies underestimating their capabilities. Hayes stood before the main display in her command center, watching real-time feeds from across human space. Alien fleets systematically destroying colonies, refugee ships fleeing into deep space, desperate calls for help echoing unanswered through the communication networks. To outside observers, humanity appeared helpless and abandoned. That was exactly the impression Earth wanted to create. The fleet surrounding her represented the largest military construction project in human history. While colonies struggled with basic infrastructure, Earth had poured resources into developing technology that could challenge any alien civilization. The ships were built in sections across dozens of hidden facilities, then assembled in the outer solar system where no foreign intelligence service could observe them. Vengeance itself was larger than most space stations, its hull reinforced with materials that could withstand direct hits from weapons capable of cracking planets. The ship's armament included kinetic bombardment systems that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed and energy weapons reverse-engineered from alien technology recovered from dead worlds. But the fleet's greatest advantage wasn't its weapons or armor. It was the fact that nobody in the galaxy suspected it existed. Earth had spent decades projecting an image of technological backwardness while secretly studying every alien species that might pose a threat. They knew their enemies' capabilities, tactics and weaknesses while remaining completely unknown themselves. Hayes reviewed the intelligence reports that had been flowing in since the attacks began. The alien coalition was exactly what Earth's analysts had predicted. Multiple species working together under Galactic Council authorization to eliminate what they saw as an upstart civilization. The Ravek Empire provided heavy assault ships and ground forces. The Sector Commonwealth contributed advanced sensors and communication systems. The peaceful-seeming vegan collective supplied logistical support and intelligence analysis. Each alien species had been carefully studied for decades through monitoring equipment hidden throughout human space. Their weapon signatures, tactical, doctrines and command structures were all known quantities. Earth's military planners had developed specific countermeasures for every ship class and battle strategy the aliens might employ. The timing of the alien attacks had actually been manipulated by Earth's intelligence services. Carefully placed, information about colonial defenses and population centers had guided the aliens toward targets that would maximize their confidence while minimizing actual strategic damage to humanity. The colonies being destroyed were mostly agricultural and mining settlements that could be rebuilt. The critical research stations and industrial centers had been quietly evacuated weeks before the attacks began. Hayes studied the tactical displays showing alien fleet movements across human space. The invaders were following predictable patterns, concentrating their forces for maximum psychological impact while leaving their supply lines vulnerable. They had positioned themselves exactly where Earth's war planners wanted them, scattered across multiple star systems, and confident in their overwhelming superiority. The Admiral opened a secure channel to Earth Command and received the authorization she had been waiting for decades to hear. Operation Homecoming was approved. The Earth Defense Force was cleared to reveal itself and begin the systematic elimination of alien forces in human space. Rules of engagement were simple: no negotiations, no warnings, no survivors who might carry intelligence back to their home systems. Hayes transmitted the go order to her fleet commanders and watched as ships that had been hidden in the outer solar system for years began moving toward the inner planets. The vessels accelerated smoothly toward jump points that would carry them to battle zones across the galaxy. Each ship carried enough firepower to level entire alien fleets, and there were hundreds of them. The fleet's first targets were carefully selected for maximum impact. New Haven and Green Valley had been designated as demonstration sites where alien commanders would learn exactly what they had awakened. The refugee ships scattered throughout space would become rallying points where human colonists would witness their salvation. The alien propaganda broadcasts celebrating humanity's defeat would become monuments to their own hubris. Vengeance led the primary battle group toward New Haven, where Captain Torres and his volunteers were preparing to make their final stand. Hayes had been monitoring communications from the colony and felt genuine respect for the administrator who had chosen to stay with his people. Torres represented the best of human spirit, and he deserved to see his world liberated rather than destroyed. The jump to hyperspace was smooth and silent, the massive fleet moving through dimensions that alien science had never learned to navigate effectively. Earth's breakthrough in faster-than-light travel had come from studying wreckage recovered from a dozen different civilizations, combining their best technologies into something unprecedented. Hayes used the travel time to review psychological warfare protocols. The alien broadcasts mocking human weakness would be turned against them, as Earth ships demonstrated capabilities that no colonial settlement was supposed to possess. The systematic destruction of alien forces would be broadcast across all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy understood humanity's true strength. The Admiral's personal motivation went beyond military objectives. Her brother had been among the first colonists to leave Earth, settling on an agricultural world that was now nothing but radioactive dust. Her daughter commanded a research station that had been evacuated just hours before alien forces arrived. This wasn't just about protecting human territory. It was about making the species responsible pay for every life they had taken. As the fleet approached its destination, Hayes reviewed the intelligence profiles of the alien commanders they would be facing. Commander Malik of the Ravek Empire was known for his arrogance and tendency to underestimate opponents. The sector Commonwealth admirals relied too heavily on technology and became paralyzed when faced with tactics they hadn't programmed their computers to handle. The Vegan Collective coordinators assumed all conflicts could be resolved through superior information analysis. All of them were about to discover that human military doctrine emphasized overwhelming first strikes designed to break enemy morale completely. Earth's weapons were built to destroy alien ships so thoroughly that survivors would spread terror among their own forces. The goal wasn't just victory, it was psychological dominance that would prevent future aggression against human space. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Haven system, with weapons already charged and targeting solutions locked onto every alien vessel. Hayes opened a channel to broadcast across all frequencies, her voice carrying the authority of a civilization that was tired of being underestimated. This is Admiral Rebecca Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. Human colonies are under our protection. Alien forces in human space have 30 minutes to withdraw or be destroyed. This is your only warning. The alien response came exactly as predicted. Confused communications between ship commanders, frantic attempts to analyze the unexpected human vessels, and arrogant dismissal of what they assumed was a desperate bluff. Commander Malik himself broadcast a mocking response questioning how primitive human colonists thought they could challenge the might of established galactic powers. Hayes smiled grimly as she gave the order to open fire. The aliens were about to learn exactly what humanity had been building while they celebrated their easy victories over helpless settlements. The galaxy's established powers had made the classic mistake of confusing patience with weakness. Now, they would discover the difference between the two in the most painful way possible. The explosions lit up New Haven's dawn sky like artificial stars being born and dying in seconds. Captain David Torres stood in his command center watching displays that showed impossible things happening in the space above his world. Massive alien warships that had seemed invincible minutes before were breaking apart under the focused fire of vessels that shouldn't have existed. Earth's fleet had arrived without fanfare or dramatic speeches. The ships simply appeared at the edge of the system and began methodically destroying every alien vessel they could target. Their weapons fired streams of energy that carved through advanced alien armor like it was made of paper. Kinetic projectiles moving at tremendous speeds turned enemy ships into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Torres watched Commander Malik's flagship, a massive Ravek dreadnought that had been preparing to bombard his colony, fold in half as Earth weapons tore through its central structure. The alien commander's arrogant broadcasts ended abruptly as his ship's power systems exploded in chain reactions that lit up half the system. Similar scenes played out across the display as dozens of alien vessels died in the first few minutes of battle. The human colonists who had chosen to stay and fight pressed their faces against windows and emergency viewports, staring up at a sky filled with impossible victories. Children who had been crying in fear now pointed excitedly at the lights show overhead. Adults who had prepared for death found themselves witnessing the complete reversal of humanity's fortunes. Admiral Hayes's voice cut across all communication frequencies with cold professionalism. This is the Earth Defense Force. Any alien forces remaining in this system have 10 minutes to surrender or be destroyed. We do not negotiate with species that target civilian populations. The few surviving alien ships tried to flee toward hyperspace, jump points, but Earth's vessels moved to intercept them with speed that spoke of revolutionary propulsion technology. None of the invaders escaped. The entire alien fleet was eliminated in less than 30 minutes, their wreckage scattered across space as a monument to their miscalculation. Torres received a direct communication from Admiral Hayes as Earth ships moved into protective positions around his world. The Admiral's face appeared on his display, showing a woman in her 50s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Her expression was professional but not unkind as she addressed the Colonial Administrator directly. Captain Torres, I'm Admiral Rebecca Hayes, commanding the Earth Defense Force. Your colony is now under our protection. Medical and engineering teams are standing by to assist with any damage the alien occupation may have caused. Torres found his voice after several seconds of stunned silence. Admiral, we thought Earth had abandoned us. We sent distress calls for days without receiving any response. Where did this fleet come from? Hayes's expression softened slightly. Earth never abandoned its children, Captain. We were preparing for exactly this situation while maintaining the appearance of weakness. The colonies were never truly alone. You were bait that allowed us to identify and eliminate threats to human civilization. The implications of her words hit Torres like a physical blow. Earth had known the attacks were coming and had allowed them to proceed in order to draw out humanity's enemies. Thousands of people had died in colonies across human space, while Earth prepared its response in secret. The abandonment that had seemed so cruel was actually part of a larger strategy. Similar conversations were taking place throughout human space as Earth's battle groups revealed themselves and began systematically destroying alien forces. At Green Valley, Emma Roberts watched in amazement as ships identical to those at New Haven emerged from hyperspace and eliminated the enemy fleet with clinical efficiency. The agricultural world that had been preparing for bombardment was suddenly safe under the protection of weapons that seemed designed by gods of war. The refugee ship Morning Star found itself escorted by a full squadron of Earth's finest vessels, as Dr. Stone and his fellow survivors watched their rescuers with awe and growing understanding. The technology they were witnessing represented decades of secret development, using discoveries from across human space. Earth hadn't been stagnating while the colonies expanded. It had been building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Hayes opened a galaxy-wide broadcast from her flagship as Earth's forces completed the destruction of alien invasion fleets across multiple star systems. Her message was transmitted on all frequencies and translated into every known alien language, ensuring that no species could claim ignorance of humanity's new position. I am Admiral Rebecca Hayes, speaking for the Earth Defense Force and all of human civilization. The unprovoked attacks on human colonies have been repelled with the complete destruction of all hostile forces. Any species or organization that authorized these attacks now faces the consequences of their actions. The broadcast continued with footage of alien fleets being annihilated by Earth's weapons. The proud warships that had seemed unstoppable were reduced to debris in minutes. The advanced technology that alien species had trusted for millennia proved useless against human weapons that operated on principles they had never encountered. Humanity has demonstrated patience with species that threatened our colonies. That patience has limits. Any future aggression against human settlements will result in the complete elimination of the responsible parties. We do not issue warnings. We do not negotiate with terrorists. We respond to threats with overwhelming force designed to prevent future aggression. The psychological impact of the broadcast rippled across the galaxy as established alien civilizations realized they had gravely miscalculated. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers possessed military technology that surpassed their own. More importantly, humans had demonstrated a willingness to use that technology with devastating effectiveness. The Galactic Council, which had sanctioned the attacks on human colonies, found themselves facing demands for emergency sessions as member species reconsidered their positions. The Ryvek Empire's remaining territories declared neutrality and withdrew from all human-controlled systems. The Sector Commonwealth began broadcasting diplomatic overtures that would have been unthinkable days before. Torres stood in his rebuilt command center a week later, watching Earth ships patrol his system's perimeter. The vessels moved with casual authority, their presence a clear message that humanity would no longer tolerate threats to its people. Supply ships from Earth were already arriving with materials to repair the damage caused by the alien occupation. Admiral Hayes had explained the truth during their private conversation. Earth had been watching and preparing for over a century, using the colonies as early warning systems and intelligence-gathering posts. The apparent weakness that had invited attack was actually careful misdirection designed to study potential enemies while developing countermeasures. The Admiral's final message to the galaxy made humanity's position clear. Earth extends an offer of peaceful relations to any species willing to respect human sovereignty. Those who choose conflict will discover that humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to surprise those who underestimate us. The galaxy now knows what happens when Earth comes calling. Torres looked up at the alien ships burning in his sky and realized that humanity had learned the universe's most important lesson. In a cosmos where might made right, sometimes the best help came from those who waited in the darkness until the perfect moment to strike. The species that had once begged for assistance from indifferent aliens now commanded respect through superior firepower and unshakable resolve. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when humanity stopped being prey and became the hunter. Earth had shown that the scattered colonies were never truly alone, that the homeworld was always watching from the shadows, always preparing for the inevitable confrontation. News of humanity's victory spread through galactic communication networks faster than the fleeing alien survivors could return to their home systems. Species that had celebrated humanity's apparent weakness now found themselves analyzing combat footage that defied their understanding of human capabilities. The primitive colonists they had mocked possessed a parent civilization capable of building weapons that could challenge the greatest powers in known space. Dr. Stone found himself aboard one of Earth's research vessels, studying technology that represented everything his team at Proxima Station had been trying to achieve. The quantum communication systems he had theorized about were already operational across Earth's fleet. The exotic matter research that had been destroyed with his station was decades ahead of his most optimistic projections. Earth had taken every discovery from the colonies and used it to build something magnificent and terrible. The refugee camps that had been hastily established across human space were transformed into temporary colonies, protected by Earth's patrol ships. Families who had lost everything in the alien attacks found themselves receiving assistance from a civilization that seemed to have unlimited resources. The homeworld that had appeared to abandon them was suddenly providing advanced medical technology, construction equipment, and enough military protection to deter any future aggression. Emma Roberts walked through Green Valley's restored command center, studying reports from across human space. Every human colony was now under the protection of Earth's Defense Force. Patrol routes had been established to ensure rapid response to any threats. Communication networks had been upgraded with quantum encryption that alien intelligence services couldn't crack. Humanity had gone from scattered and vulnerable to united and formidable in a matter of days. The most shocking revelation came when Earth began revealing the true scope of its preparations. Hidden military bases throughout the solar system came online, their existence unknown even to the colonial governments. Manufacturing facilities that had been disguised as civilian research stations began producing advanced weapons and defensive systems for distribution to human settlements. The illusion of Earth's weakness crumbled as the reality of its strength became undeniable. Captain Torres received a personal message from Admiral Hayes explaining humanity's new position in galactic politics. The species that had once begged for membership in galactic organizations now found themselves being courted by civilizations desperate to avoid becoming targets of human displeasure. Trade agreements that had been impossible to negotiate were suddenly being offered with favorable terms. Territories that had been denied to human expansion were quietly being made available. The Galactic Council's emergency session ended with a formal apology to humanity and an offer of full membership with voting rights equal to the most established civilizations. The organization that had sanctioned attacks on human colonies was now desperate to avoid becoming humanity's next target. They understood that Earth's response had been measured and restrained compared to what it was actually capable of delivering. Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the final alien survivors flee beyond the edge of human space. The demonstration was complete. Every species in the galaxy now understood that humanity was not to be underestimated or threatened. The colonies that had been seen as easy targets were now recognized as advanced positions of a civilization that commanded respect through superior firepower and tactical doctrine. The Admiral opened a final communication to all human colonies, her voice carrying the authority of a species that had proven its strength when it mattered most. This is Admiral Hayes, speaking to all human settlements. The threats against our colonies have been eliminated. Earth's Defense Force will maintain permanent patrol stations throughout human space to ensure this never happens again. Humanity has taken its rightful place among the galaxy's great civilizations. The broadcast ended with images of Earth's fleet dispersing to establish permanent bases throughout human territory. The ships that had emerged from decades of secrecy would now serve as visible reminders of humanity's strength. No alien species would again mistake human patience for weakness or view scattered colonies as easy prey. Torres stood in his office watching Earth ships establish a permanent base in his system's asteroid belt. The massive installation would serve as both a defensive position and a symbol of humanity's new status. Children who had cowered in fear during the alien occupation now played in gardens protected by weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. The story of humanity's transformation from scattered refugees to galactic power would be told for generations. Earth had taught the universe a lesson that would not be forgotten. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from those who remain silent until action becomes necessary. The colonies had never been abandoned. They had been protected by guardians who understood that the best help often comes from those who wait in the darkness until the perfect moment to strike. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through diplomacy or cultural achievement, but through the fundamental truth that governs all civilizations. Those who can destroy a thing, control a thing. Earth had demonstrated the ability to destroy any threat to human space, and the galaxy had acknowledged humanity's right to exist on its own terms. The age of human vulnerability was over. The age of human dominance had begun.